everyone, and welcome to Mando Monday's Roundup, November 2nd edition. I'm Rebecca Mosley, co-founder of LaughingPlace.com, and along with me for this episode is our Star Wars content director, Mike Celestino.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm still recovering. I've had between the daylight savings and Halloween and staying up till past 2 a.m. on last Thursday to watch the season premiere of The Mandalorian, which we're going to talk about in a little while. And then this morning getting up for the 6 a.m. reveal of new Mando Monday stuff. My sleep has been irregular at best. So I'm going to be recovering for a little bit from that.
Oh, I totally feel you. Only mine is a little bit different in that I stayed up to watch The Mandalorian, but then I had nobody to talk about it with because my husband had gone to sleep, and I knew that you were head down, writing up your review, so I didn't want to bug you. So I had this bubbling excitement and enthusiasm, and it took a little while until that adrenaline kind of wore.
No, I had the same thing. Yeah, and I went to bed around 2 Thursday night, and I was buzzed, like you said. I was like,
crazy.
Yeah. How do you fall asleep after that amount of excitement?
No, you don't. But it's Mando Monday, which means there was more excitement today, and we're gonna start with a little bit of talk on the fun trinkets and what's its and who's its and all that kind of stuff, and then we're gonna discuss the episode that dropped on Friday morning, if you want to call it that. But for Laughing Place this morning, we started off at Disney Springs, and our Jeremiah got to visit the Amoret Patisserie, where they are currently offering these petite cakes, and it's $9 for a cookies and cream filled truffle-like with a cake base. So nice little, just to me, it's like a one bite, right? It reminds me kind of the zebra dome size that you would enjoy when at Animal Kingdom. But yeah, here it is. It's the child.
So is that all edible? Is that like little disc that he's sitting on? Is that edible?
I believe the disc is like was like a little cardboard plate, for lack of a better word. But yeah, no, the rest of it was edible, chocolate, and I was a little surprised it had a cookies and cream filling, because I was thinking more along the lines of a like a key lime would have been the way I might have gone with that. But that's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, right? But over at shopdisney.com, there was a lot of new merchandise available. Mike has done a great job of kind of rounding it up for us. And Mike and I are going to just chat a little bit about what popped up on Shop Disney.
So this post is kind of a mix between the 2 weeks, but it's all stuff on Shop Disney that you can go and get. There's this larger scale Mandalorian figure with the flamethrower and the blaster,
and he has sound clips from the like real character phrases as they describe it. And you've got, if you were heading to the park sometime in the future, you can have this magic band to gain access with the adorable child. One of the things that I remember when they were first doing these magic bands is that some of them would interact uniquely with the touch point, but that seems to have gone away. But I was thinking, when I saw this one, I was thinking how much fun it would be if like they could have had it where that Mandalorian theme would play when you do the touch point. But
yeah,
like I say, cool. that kind of personalization seems to have dissipated. So and then there were the vinyl play sets where you have the various set of characters. This was $27, and you have how many? Let's see, nine different figures. Am I counting that right?
Yeah, I think, and the child is only like a half a size or
right.
even less figure. So, but yeah, that's a nice set. It's got basically all the recurring characters from the Mandalorian.
Are these types of items ones that you would have purchased when you were a wee kid, or were you all about the articulation?
Yeah, these don't move. There's, like you said, no articulation. The arms and legs don't move. They're just basically like little plastic statues. So I think I would have been more into the action figures that are posable,
I now think of these as a great buy if you're wanting to do your own kind of DIY birthday cake, because you can use these as a decoration on the cake, and then they have a toy later on. my parents did something along those lines with a princess. I think it was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So I ended up playing with the dwarfs, afterwards. And then of course there's pins. This is one of those dimensional PVC. The child. They had a pin set with the hover pram, and then that image of the two of them from the kind of reveal moment is how I think.
I was trying to figure out, what is that glowing sphere supposed to be? Is that, I guess, the sun in the background of that planet? I don't know.
Yeah, I would say so. I think that moment is kind of backlit, so maybe so kind of representation of that.
It's funny. It's almost like religious imagery. That it's like a stained glass window, kind of.
It really it does strike me that way too. And then there was.
That moment was always kind of like the Sistine Chapel when
they're right.
Touching the fingers each other, right? So.
Right. So kind of calling back to that religious iconography. And then you had the photo of the child.
Yeah, I think this one's been available for a while, but I just put everything that Disney Shop Disney told me was new. I put on there. I put on that list.
There's journal.
Cool shirts coming up too.
This
is the journal.
I'll scroll on down. This is what you would. They have if you want to outfit your office or your back to school kind of environment, they have pens and notebooks, coffee mugs, pencil sets. Of course, Loungefly has the child backpack with the pram design on the interior and some cute sayings in Arabesh. They also have a smaller wallet. I'm sorry, they call it a wristlet. You have your ornaments as people are preparing to decorate their tree, and then there were some T-shirts.
Yeah, I like this shirt. It's kind of like a comic book style art. Except
really?
I don't like that phrase. It says "hello, friend." Like I feel like a lot of this Mandalorian merchandise has these phrases on it that aren't from the show, and they've just like made them up. I'm like, well, nobody's ever said that on the Mandalorian. Why does it say that there?
It feels very ET.
Yeah.
It's rather than for me. That's a ET phrase rather than a Mandalorian phrase. But I like the Mandalorian text at the top. I like the styling that they've used there in this particular shirt. And then they have this shirt with the comic book panels. So they have the phrase, "This is the way," and then Mando, "This is more than I signed up for," and then "Hello, friend," and then the child, "I'm stronger than you think," which is what we in essence learned that first season. We learned that does the child really need, I always wonder that question, does the child really need to be taken care of, or could the child, take care of his, I don't know. It's like, it seems so powerful, but yet there's also this vulnerability to the child. So it'll be fun to see where the adventures go this year. And then you've got the adorable, right? Cash in on the cute factor. And there's the over the years we've seen the popular, come to the dark side. We have cookies. And so now you have come to the cute side. With
the first time I saw this shirt this morning, because my brain was still asleep, it looked like it said Coke. To the cute side. Yeah. Because of that weird M.
I was there with you too. I did similarly. Coke to the dark side. Okay. The child with his cup of soup or tea. See, I always do be one with the Force.
Yeah, I was going to say that since they're doing these weekly product reveals between each episode, I was almost kind of wondering if they were going to have stuff related to the episode that we had just seen. And they're not really, it seems like so far they're not really doing, like, there's no like Cobb Vance merchandise or anything yet.
Right, or crate dragon.
Yeah.
Specific, yeah. Playset, right? Like a crate dragon playset.
Yeah, this one's kind of neat. This is like a Vincent Van Gogh kind of style.
With the swirling.
Yeah.
I wonder if you do that. Have you done that thing with the classic painting where you stare at a spinning disc for a while, and then you look at a starry night, and it causes it to have motion because of the optical illusion it creates within your brain? I wonder if you can do that with this.
Right.
This T-shirt. And then there were the the Crocs that popped up last week with the shiny silver and the Mando tag, and of course pet gear.
Pet pajamas and human pajamas after that for all ages.
The child with various holiday images. So Christmas tree, holiday Christmas presents. Yeah. So.
And then at the bottom I put this is like the headband. I think this has been out for a bit. I don't know. And then Lego.
Towards the end is the Lego sculpture. Okay, let me prop that back up. And there we go. And this is $79.99, and you can see how tall it stands. It's a dimensional figure of Legos, and his ears can actually be articulated. You can manipulate them down or up to give your little guy a mood. So let's see, Mike. Where do we want to go?
Let's do Target.
Okay.
Next. This is only a few things that Target released.
Target offering a limited edition Funko, and that would have just dropped 15 minutes ago, I believe, because this 3 p.m. Eastern. I'm sorry, 3 p.m. Central Time that they do their drop. The stuff appears at 6 a.m. and then it will be available for sale later in the day. So there's the R2d2 Funko Pop.
I mean, obviously R2d2 has not shown up in The Mandalorian yet, but this is also the 40th anniversary of The Empire Strikes Back, and he's supposed to be like muddy like he is on Dagobah.
Ah, okay. I was wondering. I was trying to remember why he'd be so muddy. And then there's the child bag and an adorable beanie featuring the child in his pram with a little green poof on the top. And that's also a Funko styled child featured on there as well. And these are all from Target. That's where you'll find these items. And finally, before we get to
there was one more item there that was the Hasbro Vintage Collection, the Mandalorian and the Beskar armor. And I think this is pretty much the same figure that's going to come with that Razor Crest HasLab, except it has a vinyl cape instead of the cloth cape that's going to come with that one, so he can sit down in the ship.
Okay. And then that's one of the things that I've noticed with these characters is that if you're looking to purchase the smaller size, there's a variety. They have, some of them are called vintage and some of them are called retro, and the retro are very simplistic and more similar to a toy that you would have found, back in the 80s. And then the vintage style is a bit more detailed and offers some different accessories. I actually picked up a 3 3/4 from Walmart that is the Mandalorian and the child on one of these backer cards. So
nice.
Yeah, that'll be coming later on. I think they said it ships in December or something like that. So, and finally, over at Build-A-Bear.
Yeah.
This is an adorable little plush.
I think the child one has been available previously, but today they announced that floating pram, and it doesn't actually float, but it's cool to keep your plush in there, and then the Mandalorian style Build-A-Bear bear.
And he comes with a sound chip, so when you push on his paw, you'll get a little sound of the show itself. Yep. Yeah. And the pram is sold separately, so if you have a toy and if you have a plush and you would like to, let it chill in the child's pram, you can purchase that separately. And that's currently only available online through buildabear.com. And also Hasbro, right? A new Nerf gun.
Right, and this is the Death Trooper gun, which I don't know. I feel like you don't see a lot of gun toys these days, so I thought it was surprising that they're putting this out, but it's obviously very brightly colored in the orange color to differentiate it from real looking guns.
And the darts are glow in the dark.
Oh, that's cool.
So fun little addition to it, and something I haven't seen. It may exist in other toys, but that was new to me that they had glow in the dark darts.
Yeah. And these are the Hot Toys, the Child, and the Mandalorian, which are, well, as of this morning, they weren't actually available for purchase. They had just announced them, I guess, and revealed a couple images of what they're going to look like. I think it's weird that the Child, I think probably his ears are removable to put in other variations of them, but it looks odd to have that seam there between his face and the ears. For some reason, that makes him look strange.
And from Funko.
Yeah, this is another one that wasn't available to buy this morning, but they had just, I think, revealed the images. So it's the Mandalorian and the Child riding on a bantha, which I don't think we saw. I guess maybe that did happen in the episode. Now that I think of it, I'm not sure. I guess at one point when they're traveling through the desert in that caravan, I guess they could have been on a bantha.
Yep. Yeah, they were at the once they teamed up. Yep, yeah, totally. So yeah, so that's all. As always, MandoMondays.com also will have a roundup of the new items that have come out. You can find, and they have so many items there. And Laughing Place is slowly also working our way through the list and sharing those items with you as well. So yeah.
How about the Regal Robot stuff? Did you want to do that?
I will pull that up for you, Mike.
Okay, great.
Let's see.
So there were actually 2 announcements from our friends over at Regal Robot, one last week and one this week that are, these are like high-end replicas and collectibles. And this was the new one. It's the Mudhorn Skull, which we haven't seen on the show. We've seen the Mudhorn as he appears when he is alive, but they kind of imagined what the skull would look like, and they've made a sculpture out of it.
And that'll go nicely with their other pieces that they've had with the I keep moving on it thinking it'll pop over to the side, but with the Mythosaur skull. And let's see, Mike, I have not been able to pull up for you the Gamorrean item.
Okay, well, I mean, we could just say that they also have a replica of the maquette statue that they used to design the Gamorrean fighters. There it is, right there.
Ta-da!
In the premiere episode.
So there you go, and that's from our friends over at Regal Robot.
Yep. And if you want to know more about Regal Robot, I did a nice long interview with Tom Spina, the founder, on my podcast. It's one of the very early episodes.
I wanted to showcase some of the art that was released. It's from darkenart.com, and they have it's almost to me like a comic book cover representation of the various episodes, chapters.
Yeah, that's cool. I hadn't seen this, so
and
that's pretty neat.
They released today, I think it was Sanctuary, and I can't remember. Maybe it was The Sin, but there were a couple of titles available from them. And then they also have a limited edition release. And what they're doing with that is you can order between now and Sunday. And this is in Acme Archives. And you order through now and Sunday. And I guess that may, my assumption is that it'll address the size of the edition, because it says ordered now through Sunday. Yeah, I thought that one was cool too. But I was really fond of those cover stuff.
Yeah, those are cool for sure.
Yeah. And then the last thing I wanted to pepper you with, Mike, before we finally get to talk about the episode, is I wanted to know which of these you would have chosen back when you were a little one. Would you have chosen to ride the child bike? These are from Huffy. and it
Okay.
has the child on the front basket,
Well, speaking of ET, yeah, they just
right?
made him ET in the basket of the bicycle
And then
there.
the Mandalorian on the seat. And then, or would you have ridden the Mandalorian bike, which is the Mando helmet on the front is your bike basket, the Mandalorian bounty hunter warrior on the seat, and then and then the basket. So see, item A, item B. Transport yourself back
Yeah, it's a
to
good question.
child Mike.
I don't remember. I mean, I had bicycles growing up, but I don't remember any of them being like themed to a pop culture. Like, I think maybe in the 80s all the bikes were just bikes, and there weren't like there wasn't like a He-Man bike or a Ghostbusters bike, which would probably be the ones that I would have had.
Yeah.
But if I had to choose now, uh
Which do you think if that
I
doesn't get
feel like
available to
okay, I
8-year-old
feel
Mike?
like putting myself in the mind of a young boy, you'd probably want to avoid getting made fun of, and I think the Baby Yoda one might get you made fun of. So I would say you pick like
So you would have
the
been
tough guy
the
character.
Mando, get the Mando bike.
Yeah.
I was thinking the child bike would have been my cup of tea. It's very cute. The little guy just sitting there in the front, kind of like on the episode when he was, except in the episode he's in the side bag, right? When Mando
Right.
jumps on the speeder bike, but
Right.
his little face there is very cute. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's pretty good.
I was enjoying that. So, yeah. Okay. Now that we've made it through our Mando window shopping,
Yeah.
it's time for the season 2, episode 1, otherwise known as chapter 9.
Right. And the title is The Marshal.
The Marshal.
And I feel like there's a lot. I have 2 full pages of notes of stuff that I want to talk about. But I just want to say, like, my first thought when the episode ended was, I love Star Wars. Like, this just reminded me that I love Star Wars so much, and it's great to have that reminder. And there was like an energy, I feel like, even though we're in this cultural moment where people aren't interacting a lot in person, I do feel like there was this very positive response that I saw all over social media in reaction to this episode. So that made me really happy. And I have a ton to say other than that, but that was my initial thoughts. What about you?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. Before I go on, Mike, do we need to be sure to say this is spoiler filled, or is that kind of implied with the notion of a recap?
Yeah, I think we should say that this is we're 3 days into having this episode on Disney Plus as of this recording, and I feel like, people had the weekend to watch it, and yeah, if you haven't seen it already and you care, go watch it and then come back. This will be on your YouTube channel, and then this conversation is gonna go up on my podcast as well. But yeah, I feel like you've had your chance,
right?
And if you haven't had your chance, don't watch this right now.
Yeah,
come back and check it out later.
As I watched, first off, when it began and there was the now standard Star Wars iconic. The logo at the beginning with the various figures flashing by in varying colors. I could tell I was excited. I got that same feeling I do when I'm in the theater and that, trumpet fanfare would begin, right? So I was a little surprised that it hit me the way it did. And then as the episode progressed, I was really enjoying it. And as we talk about it, I'll share like some of the kind of I wrote them down so I could share kind of in the moment what happened. But when it was over, it had transformed me to my childhood, because a lot of my peers had those Kenner toys, and also on the playground, we would kind of create our own Star Wars adventures and kind of act them out together. And I felt like I had stepped back into that world. But now, instead of it being the stories that my friends Dave and Bill had crafted, well, now it was the stories that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, and they have so much better toys than I ever had. And it was that kind of feeling. And so there was this joy, just joy, I think, is ultimately what I had.
Well, that's something that they've said multiple times, that Favreau and Filoni have said about the show, is that it's them playing with the toys that they loved as a kid, and that's why they kind of wanted to dig into like the supporting the tertiary roles that you would normally, the bounty hunters and the smugglers and stuff, this the underworld of Star Wars that you didn't get to see highlighted as much in the
I'm
movies.
so glad that, as in getting ready for the episode, rather than do a specific rewatch of the series, I instead, those hours leading up to it, watched the gallery, which was all those like 25, 30-minute episodes that they did kind of behind the scenes. And I think it very much set me in the right frame of mind for the arrival of this episode.
Yeah. The second thing I want to say is that I was very happy that it seemed like about a third of what we saw in the trailers has already been shown in this episode. So about 2/3 of the trailers are still left to come up at some point in future episodes of this season. But I feel like that makes me feel like I know even less about what's coming up, because they chose to pack those trailers with a lot of stuff from the first episode. I think about a third of that, and I was happy about that, because they're saving their surprises for later on. Some of them, a good amount of them, because there's still 7 episodes left to go.
Yeah, no, I would agree. That was one of the, and then I also did the whole, okay, I remember that moment. I remember that moment as especially that opening. I mean, the episode opens with the Gamorrean fight, and so it was very much so. So yeah.
And then the third thing I want to say before we go into like specifics about the story and stuff is that, as much as I love this episode, and this is the one like negative thing that I'm gonna say, I think this whole discussion, I will never forgive certain entertainment news websites for spoiling certain things, because I feel like, as jazzed as I was at the end of that episode, if that stuff had been a surprise, which I know that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni wanted it to be a surprise, if it had ended up being a surprise to me, I would have like gone ballistic, and I think the internet would have too. I think it would have been as big a reveal as Baby Yoda last year or whatever, but it had come out months ago because of the spoiler culture that we live in now, and it's a bummer to me, and I wish that it wasn't that way, but I'll forever hold a grudge, I think, and it's sad. It's sad to me that that's the way things are, but I'll have to get over it and move on and try to enjoy as much as I can, regardless.
I'll say that for me, because I'm not as like deeply connected right now in like regularly writing and reading all the Star Wars content like your responsibilities bring you at Laughing Place. I'd kind of forgotten some of those things, and so they were still, once those moments kind of happened, I was, oh yeah, that's right. But it hadn't been seared into my brain to where I was anticipating it, or so in that way it was still a fun moment for me. So yeah.
Okay, so I think we should just get into the episode. I want to start by saying that this is the first episode that was actually directed by Jon Favreau, the creator of the show. And of course, he's best known as a film director. And I think the episode is like, it makes it very apparent how great it is to have a very talented, very experienced, very competent filmmaker at the helm. And I think like every frame of the show is just so well, of this episode is well composed. The action is so well staged. The guy just knows what he's doing at this point, and it came across like from the beginning to the end. And he used a couple of really interesting tricks, one of which I want to get into a bit later. But yeah, I just think Jon Favreau is a very talented blockbuster filmmaker, and this was the episode that felt the most like a movie to me.
I would agree, and for me throughout it, I kept finding myself like, oh, that's familiar, because there were so many moments that were clearly theatrical homage to already existing works, but yet not like a direct lift. It wasn't like a carbon copy or a, almost sometimes those end up being almost parody rather than homage. But in this case, it really was kind of, oh, that's reminiscent of, or I feel like I've seen that before. But then if you were to actually try and find it specifically, you wouldn't necessarily find that exact moment. It's just it has similar imagery that evokes a similar response.
Yeah, and you mentioned kind of quoting movies and genre tropes and stuff, and obviously this one is very heavily influenced by the Western, but the opening scene is kind of like the opposite of that, or almost kind of feels like a film noir.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it opens with the shots from the trailer of the Mandalorian and the child walking into that very grimy looking underworld city. The one of the few things that I got out of the premiere on Friday, they did like a virtual red carpet premiere, was Jon Favreau talking about the graffiti on the wall. Do you remember that conversation, and how I guess they had a guest on the set who was a famous graffiti artist, and he suggested doing this graffiti, and he and his team came and did all this crazy Star Wars graffiti, and I think it's like my wife was saying, I bet there's a bunch of like hidden Easter eggs and stuff in there if you were to go through frame by frame. I really liked that.
I know for me in that first few moments, I felt like I could pull out. I pulled out something. Oh, that looks like a protocol droid. Oh, that looks like. So there were things, just as you, I was like, okay, so I know I'm going to be on Reddit, looking and seeing what Arabesh has been pulled out, or what phrases have been discovered over the weeks as people analyze the layers of art that are decorating those walls.
Yeah, and then we get into the arena where we meet the character of Gor Koresh, who I was absolutely convinced from the trailers was voiced by Jon Favreau himself. But it turns out that this character is voiced by John Leguizamo, who has worked with Jon Favreau. He's in the movie Chef, and I'm sure he's friends with Jon Favreau. Either I was right and they recorded Leguizamo's voice after the trailers or something, or I was totally off and they just sound like each other because they're friends with each other. But it's like John Leguizamo doing a voice, because the second time through I was like listening for it and I couldn't hear John Leguizamo in there. So he's like maybe he's doing an impression of Jon Favreau. I don't know. What did you think of that character?
Oh, is there a unique species name to that character yet, or do we just know the character's name? Because that was new to me.
That species is actually in the cantina in the original Star Wars. It's called an abyssin.
Okay.
Those one-eyed.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a dark blue skin, I think.
Yeah, I figured you. I figured you'd know. See, because what caught me in that scene was how adorable Yoda's the child's ears, kind of like reflecting like a little bit of uncertainty as they were traveling in. So
Right.
that's where my focus was.
And then I thought it was so okay. We got the scene where the goons like pull all their blasters on the Mandalorian and he takes everybody out. We saw that in the trailers. That wasn't a surprise. But what was a surprise to me was how Mando dealt with Gor Koresh in the end. And I think because I kind of compare the Mandalorian as a character to Batman a little bit. Like it came up a couple times last season where I was like, oh, he's kind of like Batman in a way. And the way that he strings him up by the street light and left him hanging there was very Batman to me, but the way that he left him in the end was very un-Batman in the current our current thoughts of what Batman does and doesn't do, because he says, I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to, you won't die by my hand, I think is the line. But
Yes.
then he like shoots out the street lamp and this pack of like all you see is their eyes, these creatures that come, and I'm guessing that in this world wherever they are, these creatures don't like to walk into the light, and that's what protects you from them. But yeah, he shoots out the street light and all these creatures are clearly gonna come and kill Gor Koresh and eat him, which is not a Batman thing to do, and it's a little dark, I think, even for that this character of the Mandalorian, like where he is in this journey.
It seemed to me similar to how I envisioned some of the Western personalities that were these kind of loner on the edge of the law types, the ones who had a certain code of honor, but yet also would string a guy up and leave him to die in the desert. You know,
Right.
that's kind of that was what it. What, in fact, I felt like I had to have seen Clint Eastwood do this at one of those spaghetti western. I had to have, you know. I don't.
That's true. Yeah.
I couldn't find the specific moment, but like I say, that's where I went.
And that's a good segue because it brings us to the western element, the desert planet of Tatooine, because Gor Koresh tells Mandalorian that he knows of another Mandalorian hanging out on Tatooine, and Mando is looking for other Mandalorians to help him on his quest to bring the child back to his people. And were you excited when you first heard the word when you first heard the word Tatooine in this episode? Because we knew it was coming in the trailers, but we didn't know it was going to be the season premiere.
Okay, not only was I excited to hear Tatooine, but when there's that scene of Razor Crest coming in over the dunes and into Mos Eisley, I wrote in my notes, why are scenes of like this of Tatooine like a warm hug? What is it about these scenes? I could just feel like
Right.
yeah.
In the AV Club review that I read the other day, they were complaining that Luke in the original film says that Tatooine is the if there's a bright center in the universe, Tatooine is the planet that it's farthest from. But yet Star Wars keeps returning there over and over again, and it's actually like the site of a lot of action and intrigue and important galactic events and stuff. Even though they say it's this out of the way kind of backwater desert planet, so there is that little bit of a contradiction, but at the same time, it is the most familiar and recognizable of the Star Wars planets, and it's of course where we left a certain character that's going to come up later, so they had to go back there if they wanted to revive him as well.
Yeah, and it's also like one of those things where I feel like you never grass is always greener too, right?
Yeah.
Because you always, I want to, you have dreams of what it's like. Oh, if I could just get away from here, but yeah, maybe where here isn't quite as whatever as
right.
You think.
Yeah, if Luke had stuck around on Tatooine, he would have seen a lot of action.
Yeah, come on.
Okay, we meet Peli Motto again. This is a returning character from season 1, played by comedian Amy Sedaris. Very fun, it's a comic relief kind of a character. And the surprise of this scene is that she's got R5D4, the droid, working for her now. Now, R5 actually had a brief cameo appearance in season 1 of The Mandalorian, but he's most famous for being the droid who has a bad motivator in the original Star Wars film, so that was fun.
And I very much appreciated that they made sure to have kind of like scoring marks or some sort of, indication that there had been a problem with this particular motivator, so that
right.
people, I was like, I didn't have to question, well, is it not? No, it was very clearly.
Yeah, I don't know how far you are in that Disney Gallery series, but there's actually an episode where they show Dave Filoni making sure that R5 has the right scoring marks on him
yes.
on the set of the cantina there.
And I appreciated him for that.
I also like that we got that hologram map of Tatooine, and it's always great. It reminded me of, in a fantasy novel like Lord of the Rings or whatever, where you get the map at the beginning and you can kind of like consult back to it as you're reading along, like, oh, they're going into Rivendell, this is where they are on the map. And finally we have on screen, and I'm sure it's stuff like this has existed in reference books and stuff before, but on screen we have a map of Tatooine and where everything is in relation to each other. And there's not much on Tatooine, of course. There's Mos Eisley, where the episode starts, and then Mos Espa, where Anakin Skywalker was a slave to Watto in the prequels, and then Mos Pelgo, which is the key city, a very, very small settlement in the episode. There's the map we're looking at now on our share screen.
And that's from Mike's review that he did for the website. He included a screen grab of that. For me, in this scene, Mike, when he said when the name of the city is mentioned, and she says, "I haven't heard that name in many years." For me, instantly, I was thinking, "Oh, we're on Tatooine. We're referencing, oh, I haven't heard that name in many years." So
Right.
my mind went back to Luke and Ben Kenobi. And so it was, once again, one of those moments where I was like, okay.
Yeah, and I feel like they do that quite a bit on this show. There's always little lines that refer back to other lines of dialogue that are famous from Star Wars. So probably intentional, I would think. I also wanted to say how many times the phrase "womp rats" gets mentioned in this episode. I almost think it's like a drinking game. Like every character, every like Tatooine native uses these little sayings and phrases that uses the name Womp Rats, and of course we see Womp Rats running around a bunch. And I just thought that was funny because it's a throwaway line in the original Star Wars movie, and now of course, in the many years since, it's become this frequent go-to reference.
I was wondering, okay, that was one of my questions in my notes. Ask Mike if those were womp rats, because there was a moment where they were flying and there were these little rat-like critters, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, is that an actual womp rat?
Yeah.
So I wondered.
I think I'm pretty sure the first time we ever saw them on screen was in the Star Wars Special Edition, where they're coming into Mos Eisley Spaceport, and there's a bunch of them like scurrying around.
Okay.
And then in this episode, we actually see when they're camping, they're actually eating a womp rat that's like roasting over the fire.
Oh, I hadn't even noticed
Yeah.
that. I'll have to go back and take a peek. Oh, that's
Yeah.
very funny. Okay, very good.
Okay, then we get to Mos Pelgo, which in the books has been renamed Freetown, which they didn't reference here. So I do want to kind of talk about the origins of Mos Pelgo and the character of Cobb Vanth, because these are two very obscure things from the current canon of Star Wars novels. So they were already part of the current canon, but they had never appeared before in a visual medium. So we're seeing them for the first time, but they have appeared in the novels. But there are some very big differences as we get into like Cobb Vanth and stuff. I want to talk about the changes that they made. But the first thing that struck me was like we never hear the name Freetown, which is what Cobb Vanth named it after kind of retaking it from this mining guild that was throwing their weight around.
I know. For me, in these initial scenes when Mando kind of comes riding in on, is once again reminiscent of a classic Western where you've got the outsider arriving into town, and everybody can tell that this guy hasn't been here before, and so everybody takes special notice of him as he comes riding in. So right. I got a kick out of that, and I don't know. Are you approaching going to talk about him kind of entering the cantina? Because I don't want to get ahead of your recap.
Yeah. I think, and you're totally right. That's definitely an intentional callback reference to many scenes in many famous westerns with the stranger riding into town, everybody giving him the eye. Of course, there's like the added subtext or context here of everybody in this town knows the sheriff wears similar armor to this guy. So I think they have that idea in their head of like, okay, there's another guy with this armor showing up. What's going to happen? And speaking of westerns, we get into the cantina in Mos Pelgo. Okay, and this is something I really want to talk about. So I'm a big fan of the HBO Western drama series Deadwood, and we get a reunion between two of the main actors in that show, W. Earl Brown, who is the bartender at the Gem Saloon in Deadwood, and then, of course, Timothy Oliphant, who plays the sheriff Seth Bullock on Deadwood, and they have many interactions on that show. And it was so cool to see them both playing kind of similar roles in here as we get introduced to the Weequay bartender in Mos Pelgo and Cobb Vanth, this martial character who works. He's in control of this town, Mos Pelgo, or Freetown as they call it in the novels.
Are there roles similar in Deadwood? I mean, I'm not watched that series, so was it in some ways like very much a reunion, or just the fact that they had both been in Deadwood?
It's very much a reunion, and I think the actor W. Earl Brown had talked about how Favreau kind of did that intentionally on his Twitter page. But those two characters are a little more at odds in Deadwood than they are here. I think they're a little like friendlier here in The Mandalorian. But I just thought it was a really fun reference to another one of my favorite shows of all time. And then of course in through the door steps Cobb Vanth in the very familiar Mandalorian armor, which of course any Star Wars fan, even casual fans, are going to recognize as Boba Fett's armor. Which, you know, the last time we saw Boba Fett in the current canon is that he was eaten by the Sarlacc. And okay, well, let's get into the story of how Cobb Vanth came by the Boba Fett armor. As he tells it in the TV show, the town of Mos Pelgo was invaded by this mining guild, which is basically like a front for a crime syndicate. He runs out of town, terrified, and grabs a Camtono, another one of those ice cream makers from season 1 that had the all the Beskar metal in it, but this time it has all these jewels in it, and he ends up using that to trade the Jawas for the armor. It's very different in the book, where he's aboard a Jawa sandcrawler trading, and another character who's actually from the mining guild comes in and tries to trade with the Jawas as well, and Cobb Vanth ends up shooting that guy, and because the guy wanted to buy the Boba Fett armor from the Jawas, and Cobb Vanth shoots him and buys it himself because he's like fed up with the mining guild in the way that he is in the show. So the broad strokes are similar, but the specifics are very different. And I've been curious about how they're going to justify that, like justify, no pun intended, on Wikipedia and stuff, where they keep track of the canon. And I think what they've done is they've basically said that, okay, the stuff on the show happened, and then the stuff in the novel happened, and they don't necessarily contradict each other. It's just that one doesn't show the other, and vice versa.
They aren't. Are they directly contradictory, or more kind of how you shape the narrative? Because in both cases he gets it from the Jawas.
Yes.
But in one case there's a bit more ugliness to it than. Yes. I was just kind of saved in the desert.
Right.
Am I understanding the differences?
Yeah, and that's the other perspective of how we can look at that is, the way we get it in the show, Cobb Vanth is telling Mando what happened. Right. So this might just be the story that he tells of how he came by the armor, and doesn't include the fact that he shot someone to get it, because it's just like prettier and makes him look better that way. So yeah, I was actually going to say that as well, but yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I was just trying to make sure I was understanding the differences, because I have not read the Wendig novels.
Yeah, so that if you want to read more about Cobb Vanth, all his stuff is in the Aftermath trilogy by Chuck Wendig, and he actually just has one chapter in each of the Aftermath books. It's very, very short amount of time, very short amount of like pages that he appears in the Aftermath trilogy. I want to say it's like a total of like 10 pages overall in the novel. So it's a very, very minor character, but I think it's awesome that they went back and grabbed him out of obscurity to help transition, bring the concept of Boba Fett into this universe. I also really like what they decided to do with how he wears the armor, because if you look at the very end of this episode at the concept art, he's just wearing Boba Fett's armor the way Boba Fett wore it in those concept art designs. And then for whatever reason, but between that concept art and his appearance on screen that you can see there, he decides to wear it very differently. He's got like a red turtleneck, long john kind of thing underneath it, and he's wearing it's kind of hanging off him in a way. You know, he's taller and lankier than Boba Fett would be, and it's almost kind of like a Western meets a medieval knight kind of a design, I thought, and that comes through in his facial hair as well. What did you
Now,
think of that?
I was going to ask you, when you read the Aftermath novels, was Cobb Vanth a character who had kind of, was that a character who had jumped out from the book, who had kind of been a bit of a breakout character, even though he just had small pages? Or, you know, so were you surprised to see him pop up in this, or did you suspect that at some point, you know, he was the type of character that you would expect to see?
Well,
featured?
I never would have expected it in a million years if it hadn't been spoiled for me 3 months ago by another entertainment news website that shall not be named. But yeah, I would have been floored that this character was plucked out of almost complete obscurity.
Okay.
But like somebody on Alex was saying on Star Wars Explained, this YouTube channel that I like, and they've been on the podcast before, my podcast. But he was saying that, you know, clearly they wanted to reintroduce Boba Fett, or the concept of Boba Fett, into the show. And somebody from the Lucasfilm Story Group probably said, okay, well, here's where it stands with Boba Fett right now in the current canon. You know, his armor was found by the Jawas in the Sarlacc, and they sold it to this guy, Cobb Vanth, who's the sheriff of this tiny town on Tatooine. And, you know, I doubt Jon Favreau read the Aftermath novels. You know, I'm sure this is a suggestion, because this is what the story group does, is they try to come up with all these connections and find ways to have everything kind of be like interlocking and overlapping. And I think they did a fantastic job here. And I think, yeah, they took this character that barely made an impression on me. I think it was cool, and he's kind of like a take charge kind of guy, because he stood up to these bullies basically that were trying to take over Tatooine. But then they made, you know, they cast Timothy Olyphant, great actor, one of my favorite TV actors, and he's almost kind of typecast in this role because he has played the Marshal before on Deadwood, and in Justified, and in the current season of Fargo. Like, he's always the Marshal. That's just his character. But that's fine, because it works. It lended itself to that performance, and he's kind of toned it back to be a little bit like, almost kind of like goofier and friendlier, I thought, in this persona. But yeah, it really worked for me, and I'm super excited. Just love the design of the character and the way he wears the armor. Like I said, I'm super excited to get an action figure of Cobb Vanth in the Boba Fett armor at some point in the future.
Now, as a step above casual, I like to think of myself as a step above casual. Not a super fan, but like, just, you know, a little bit more than casual. What happened to me with this moment was, oh hey, I think that guy is wearing Boba Fett's armor. Well, I don't know, maybe just another Mandalorian. No, wait. Then he puts the helmet on the table,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, wait, that's
Right.
Boba Fett. But I still wasn't 100% for sure, so I hit, you know, Boba Fett armor Google, and to make sure that the signet that was on the
Yeah.
chest matched. And okay, it is. I can relax
Yeah.
now in the assurance that I am not jumping to a conclusion that is incorrect.
Yeah, I think they put that insert shot in there for a reason, that very distinctive close-up of the helmet with the, you know, there's that kind of a pock mark right there.
Right.
That's like, okay, that's Boba Fett. Like, there's no mistaking it. And you can tell, like, the paint's kind of been eaten away a little bit since the last time we saw it, because it was in the Sarlacc pit, you know? All those acids were, like, dissolving it. So, yeah, this is the kind of stuff that makes me really excited about what they're doing with Star Wars right now. You know, like that's something like that could happen. It's so fan servicey, but in the way that I really, really enjoy.
And I had to laugh at yet another blue liquid being, and so the decanter that he pours out his drink, it's some sort of fluorescent blue liquid.
Right.
So I was like, okay, so we have another blue liquid in the universe of Star Wars. And And I appreciated their spin on this town ain't big enough, because, when Mando talks to the marshal, he says, "Look, pal, I'm sure you call the shots where you come from, but around here, I'm the one that tells folks what to do." And that just felt like, this town ain't big enough for the both of us. So it was just, like I say, the moments like that kept me excited and interested. I was enjoying myself.
Right. So Cobb, Vanth, and Mandalorian are about to throw down. They're about to have a shootout, basically right there in the cantina, and there's an earthquake. The ground starts rumbling, and they go outside, and it looks like Tremors. It looks like the movie Tremors. It's like a big giant monster burrowing under the ground, and comes up on the other side of town and eats Bantha. And I think Cobb Vance says, "We may be able to work something out." So he tells him they've been having trouble with this Krayt Dragon. Now, Krayt Dragon, another very storied Star Wars reference. There's one in the original Star Wars film. C-3PO walks past the skeleton of a Krayt Dragon in the desert on Tatooine. And I found out today that skeleton was a prop of a dinosaur skeleton from a Disney movie called what?
One of our dinosaurs is missing.
I'd never heard of this movie before, but apparently it was shot at the same studio in London. I'm blanking on the name of it. Pinewood Studio, yeah, where the Star Wars films were shot, and they just borrowed it and brought it to the Tunisia desert and used it. I think they just threw it in there thinking, okay, well, people are never going to write a whole history or use this thing for anything else. And Krayt Dragons just became part of the expanded universe of Star Wars. And the big place where they were featured before, in my mind, was the Old Republic, Knights of the Old Republic video games, where you would kill them and you would get a pearl. But the depiction of the Krayt Dragon here is very, very different from how I always pictured it. And the whole burrowing underground thing is brand new for the Mandalorian. The whole like spitting of the acid, which I thought was pretty cool. I don't know if I like the burrowing underground. I don't know if that makes 100% sense. Like, I was thinking, like, as it's burrowing under the town, I felt like all the structures of the building would have collapsed, but it's fine. It's just, I think they wanted to have a different take on it and not just have it be a dragon, which is kind of like how it's been depicted before in other media. So they wanted to put their own stamp on it, and now this is how a Krayt Dragon behaves in the current canon. This becomes the canon now. So it's interesting. It's not how I would have done it. That was some kind of outside the box choice, I think, for that. What did you think of the Krayt Dragon?
When this initially started and we saw the arches finned thing traveling down the street, I thought Sarlacc migrate. That's where my brain went initially, was Sarlacc migrate. And then he said Krayt Dragon, but I didn't hear the word Krayt, and then I realized that I made a mistake and didn't have captions on. Because one of the things I like to do when I'm watching episodes of Mandalorian is I have the captioning on, so that way I can quickly Wikipedia or whatnot references that I'm not as up on. And so it took me until the second mention of Krayt Dragon in the episode until I was able to jump over to Wikipedia and catch up on what is a Krayt Dragon.
Yeah.
And that's when I discovered there's two different species of it, and they were hunted for the pearl, like what you're talking about. So then once I learned a little bit about it, like this pearl, in the Wikipedia entry I saw, they talked about the acid in the stomach. They didn't talk about it being a projectile, but they spoke about the acid. So then having done that,
maybe I'm wrong about the acid. Then that may have been established lore, and just the burrowing was what they had added.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that they've updated their article to reflect the project notion,
right,
based on this chapter of Mandalorian.
Yeah, so basically, like, instead of breathing fire like a dragon,
right,
it breathes acid. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wasn't expecting. I guess what I'm saying is because I read those articles, so now my expectation for the story had changed. But up until then, Crate Dragon was not necessarily like in my database of lore, so I didn't have the same expectations. You know, I didn't have a specific image in mind as we rolled along.
One of the first things I said to my wife was that, you know, when in the original Star Wars film where Luke is getting attacked by the Tuscan Raiders and Obi-Wan shows up to save him, he makes that noise. And the noise is always supposed to be, in the lore, that was the noise of a Crate Dragon that he was making. So I was like, I wonder if they took that noise and made that the noise of the Crate Dragon in the episode. And I saw someone else talking about it, and they actually went and compared it. And yeah, sure enough, that
very cool.
They thought to do that. They thought of that.
That's what my son and husband both immediately upon hearing Crate Dragon. Oh, hey, that's that thing Ben Kenobi copied. So you know that's where they went. So I didn't go there, but they did.
And then we get a couple. Speaking of Easter eggs like that, there's a couple others around this point in the episode because they ride out to the desert. The Mandalorian and Cobb Vanth ride out to the desert, and Cobb Vanth, well, Mandalorian's on that speeder bike he got from Amy Sedaris, and Cobb Vanth is riding on a makeshift speeder that is built out of one of Anakin Skywalker's pod racer engines, which I think like the internet went crazy for that one.
It was very cool to see that, not only the homage to the Western of the main characters kind of riding off to face the big baddie, but then you also have the homage to Anakin's pod racer.
And we see, in the flashback that he's telling Mandalorian the story of the raiders coming into the town and stuff. Yeah, so this is cool because we get to see Tatooine's reaction to the second Death Star explosion, which he's certain to like differentiate. He specifies, it's the second Death Star. So we see like the HoloNet news broadcast in the cantina and everybody's reaction, and then that mining guild crime syndicate comes in, takes over the town, and he goes off and gets the armor, and then when he comes back, he takes them all out using the armor as defense, but then also as one of them is riding off into the desert, he fires the rocket firing jetpack, famously from the Boba Fett action figure that was canceled, that only ever made it to the prototype stage in the very early days of the Kenner Star Wars action figures.
And so this was a learning moment for me because I thought I had played with this toy. I really did. So when this moment happened, I'm like, oh, that's just like the Boba Fett figure I used to play with my buddy. And then I went and I looked, I think it was JediNews.com is where I was, trying to read more about this toy, and I learned what you are sharing, that it was a prototype that did not find its way onto toy shelves. But I'm really convinced that
I think this is one of those like Mandela effect type things, because you're not the only person I've seen saying that. Actually, I've seen other people saying.
I can even remember him telling me I had to be very careful because the back of it was very sensitive, and to pay attention to where the missile went because he really didn't want to lose it. Like that's how deep of a memory it is. It's so weird to think that it may not be true.
I can't confirm or disconfirm that because I was I guess I was too young at that point to have the rocket firing jetpack either way.
But I have to say that my favorite fan indulgence was the sequence with this. What's this ice cream maker called?
Well, in universe it's called a Camtono.
Okay, so
I don't know the name of the ice cream maker in
No. I meant in universe.
Okay.
The Camtono is when the marshal is retelling his story, and you see him stumbling through the desert with the Camtono. And having just watched their gallery episode where Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni were talking very lovingly about Celebration, the Star Wars Celebration, and how there would be these events where they would recreate the Camtono's original appearance within Star Wars canon, I felt like this was them offering another event to Star Wars Celebrations, and I just had to laugh.
There's going to be so many Cobb Vanth cosplay at Celebration 2022 or whenever it is. Yeah, that's going to be a very popular cosplay. And if I see, a guy without the Boba Fett armor on, but with the, the red long johns and carrying the Camtono, that's going to be a pretty good one too. I'll be impressed with that one. Another sort of a deep cut reference we got is the Massif, which are the dogs that hang out with the Tuscan Raiders. We did see them in a Star Wars movie before because they first appeared in Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones.
They were disturbing, and then when they got to be all cuddly, the way that they the way it looked like a little like bulldog booty, right? Just wiggling there delightfully with like this little stub tail. It was very well done. The way that they transitioned from this kind of terrifying beast to man's best friend.
Right. Yeah, and, I want to talk a little bit about the Mandalorian's relationship with the Tuscan Raiders, because at the beginning of the episode, he actually says that he's spent quite a bit of time on Tatooine, and I thought he just meant the episode from the previous season where he was there, but I think that he's spent time on Tatooine before the beginning of the show, because he seems to obviously know the Tuscan Raiders language. We saw him using the sign language in season 1, but he gets along really well with the Tuscan Raiders. So I'm thinking there's some backstory there where Din Djarin did hang out on Tatooine for a while, and I don't think that contradicts anything that they said in season 1.
No, I would agree with you that there's a familiarity and a little bit of I would say respect that you would envision somebody only having if they had a more invested experience with that people's. So it'll be interesting to see if we learn more about his Tatooine backstory.
And we got some interesting new details about kind of the Tuscan Raider culture. The one that I like the most is that they use the gaffy sticks to clean the teeth of the banthas. Like, this is always something you thought was just a weapon, but it's actually like this multi-purpose tool. So wow. I thought that was pretty cool. And then also they have this kind of like peyote type, almost like I don't know what you would call it, like a hallucinogenic.
And it seemed like it was a gourd, right? That he kind of broke the shell of it.
Right. So this is kind of like peace pipe kind of thing, right? Obviously, these are the parallels they're drawing are between the Native Americans and the cowboys and Indians versus the settlers on Tatooine versus the natives who are the Tuscan Raiders. So I don't know what they call. I don't think they called it. I don't think they named it in the episode, but it is similar to the peyote or the peace pipe kind of thing. And then we get to where the Krayt Dragon is living, which is apparently an abandoned Sarlacc pit. This is new information as well. And Cobb Vance says that he's lived on Tatooine his whole life, and he's never heard of an abandoned Sarlacc pit. But I think Mando says, like, if the Sarlacc gets eaten, it can be abandoned. So apparently what's happened here is the Krayt Dragon ate the Sarlacc and then just stole its home, which is, I don't know. It seems like, you hear about like certain insects and stuff doing that in the real world. So they're kind of drawing from actual like natural influences there.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, the bantha, I enjoyed having more screen time with the bantha because I find them very intriguing in their familiarity and yet their complete, uniqueness, I guess would be the way to say it. But
yeah,
like from this world and yet not. I adore them.
Absolutely. And we get that fun, quote unquote fun scene where they send a Tuscan down to the cave with the bantha to tie him up there as bait to get the Krayt Dragon to come out, and the dragon comes out and eats the Tuscan instead.
And all I could think was if this was a different franchise, he would have been wearing a red shirt.
Yes,
that's what I thought.
That had not occurred to me, but yeah. That's true. You know what would have been cool actually is if we got some Tuscan Raiders who were unique in that you could identify them later. If we saw them again later, you'd be like, "Oh, it's that Tuscan Raider." But as far as I could tell, and maybe I'm wrong here, I think they all had pretty much uniform garb, right?
I would agree with you that it is very difficult to discern individuals within the Tuscan Raiders
Yeah.
that we saw.
Yeah, I just
Yeah,
thought that would have been cool if we could know an individual Tuscan Raider or two.
yeah.
Um, I,
They seem to thrive on that though, right? That's part of their
oh yeah, I
seems to
guess
be part
maybe.
of their culture.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Travel in
Oh
single
yeah,
file.
that's something else that my wife pointed out as we were watching that the traveling in single file paid off.
Hmm.
And this is a line Ben Kenobi says in the original, and we see that happening in this episode. So
Yep.
that was pretty cool. I really liked the scale model demonstration that they do. It reminded me of Back to the Future, uh, but I love that they're arguing about whether it's actually to scale or not because Cobb Vanth doesn't believe that the Crate Dragon is actually that. He says he didn't think it was that big, but I think he actually meant that long, right?
I would, yeah, I would agree with you. Like he felt that their proportions were out of touch with what he had experienced. Yeah, he did not
Right.
think that there was that much beyond. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because he had seen it. He just saw it in that previous scene, but we had also seen the skeleton in the original film, and it is a pretty long, like kind of snake-like almost skeleton. And then pretty much the rest of the episode is just like a giant like knockdown drag out battle sequence between well they go back to the town and recruit the townspeople, and there's a little bit of conflict there between the townspeople and the Tuscan Raiders, which is another like kind of an inconsistency with this Mos Pelgo from the books, because in the novels they talk about how they're actually kind of under protection from the Sand People, and I guess something could have changed between then and now because uh, the the Aftermath novel is like pretty soon after Return of the Jedi, and this episode of The Mandalorian it's like 5 or 6 years later, I think. So
Okay.
they could have had a falling out, and they talked about how the Tuscans had attacked them. So I guess in 5 years a lot of stuff can happen. But I thought that was like another little inconsistency that they had already been teamed up with the Tuscan Raiders, and they didn't really mention that here. But again, it's like how much nuance from the books do you want to
Right.
get into?
Right. Because
Um,
in this story he talks about how they attacked us and they took this like half a dozen people, and we got them back. We got twice as many as they took. And then when they do talk about the arrangement, Mando says, if you leave them the carcass and the pearl, then they
yeah,
won't bother you guys again until you break
right. So
the peace. So
yeah, it's
it in some ways makes you wonder if perhaps there's been peace between them before
yeah,
that's been broken by one side or the other.
right.
So it'll be interesting to see how that further evolves
That makes sense. Yeah, it
within canon.
could have been going back and forth, and this could have happened before. So they've got these bombs. They're gonna bury them in the ground. They're gonna lure the Crate Dragon out and set the bombs off uh, underneath it. Of course, the thing that again my wife pointed out that why didn't they just use the bantha from the beginning and put they had the bombs on the bantha. Crate Dragon eats the bantha. Bantha explodes, but that ends up being like the last resort at the end, kind of. And I thought something that was really interesting that happened during the battle, or at the very end of the battle, was that the Mandalorian was basically ready to sacrifice himself and actually tells Cobb Vanth to take care of the child, and then like basically goes into the belly of the whale to try to take care of kill this Crate Dragon, which I thought yeah, it seemed odd to me that this character that he had just met. I mean, I guess they had basically become allies in that time, but he was ready to like abandon the child and just to kill the dragon. Did that seem odd to you?
It was a bit different, but it's kind of follows the pattern of those kinds of films where
Yeah,
you buddy up, and then you take care of who I'm leaving behind. kind of imagery. So I
Sure.
wasn't shocked by it, but yeah, it was a bit the level of sacrifice. No, not at all. The fact that the Mandalorian was willing to put himself kind of on the line, as it were, that I was totally in with. But the hey Joe, I just met you. You take care of the child. That was a little less anticipated,
Yeah.
but I understand. I was kind of surprised he didn't mention the lady on Mos Eisley. There's this gal on Mos Eisley. She'll take care of the child.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Look
yeah.
her up. Look her up if I don't come back.
The other thing the other big thing that stuck out to me about the action sequence was how Jon Favreau actually played with the aspect ratio of the show, because previous to this episode, all of the Mandalorian, like all of the Star Wars films, was in the 2:35:1 CinemaScope aspect ratio. You know, if you watch it on a 16:9 widescreen television, there's going to be bars on the top and bottom like this, because it's a wider aspect ratio. But as soon as that Krayt Dragon came out of the cave, it opened up to be completely full frame in the 16:9 image. And it's something that you would see, like if you saw The Dark Knight in IMAX, in an IMAX theater, a lot of that movie was, or the big action scenes were shot in IMAX, which is a taller image than the 2:35 image like this. So it would, when the action scene started in The Dark Knight, it would open up like this and you'd have a taller image. And it feels like a little bit grander, a little bit more epic in that moment that the aspect ratio has changed. So I thought that was a super interesting choice. And both times I watched it, I missed the transition at the beginning from 2:35 to 1:85 or 16:9. And I had to go back and find, like, where did that actually happen? Because they actually disguised it pretty well when it happens at the beginning. They hid it in it's like a dolly out shot coming out from the cave when the Krayt Dragon's coming out of the cave chasing one of the Tuscan Raiders, I think. And then it doesn't go back to 2:35 until the Mandalorian's like riding off on the speeder bike after the whole action scene is done at the very end. And I was so, you think of movies being made for either aspect ratio that are commonly used these days, and they don't often like flip between the two. There are a lot of exceptions, but it's interesting that Jon Favreau chose to use the full frame, because they talked about aspect ratio in the Disney Gallery and stuff and why they went with 2:35. It feels a little bit more like traditional Star Wars because all the films were made in that aspect ratio. But I like that he made that choice and that he is willing to like play around with that a little bit. And now that's the only scene in all of live action Star Wars that's in that aspect ratio, and it stands out to me because of that. And I think it worked perfectly for its purposes.
Well, I'm gonna have to go back and make sure I pay attention to those transitions because they were lost on me, and I look forward to paying attention to
Yeah,
this
I mean,
the choices you're describing.
yeah, and it might be something. I mean, I saw a couple other people mention it in their reviews, but it might be something that only stands out to some. I went to film school and I was a film projectionist for a decade, so that might be
Yeah,
something that only stands out to somebody who thinks along those lines, along those filmmaking kind of lines.
but that's the thing about the Mandalorian for me is that there's so many different layers of beauty to it. I mean, here you are, you're talking about the aspect ratio that the director opted for in this particular portion of the episode. And so it's yet another reason to go back. I know one of the things I'm really eager for is when the score comes out, because
Yeah.
I very much enjoy that layer of story that's added in the way that they've chosen to score, some of these episodes. It's
Yeah.
really remarkable music on its own. So yeah, no, that's part of the joy of this series, all of the various layers.
Yeah, we were talking about the score when it came to the opening scene in that arena, how there's that riff that's like doo 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 doo, but they did it in like an electric guitar, and it was like, okay, well now I got to order the box set of season
Right?
2 music when that comes out, because
Yep. They're
it's
gonna get
so
us.
cool how he plays with all the variations on those themes and stuff. So
Okay, so I have a question for you regarding this fight sequence though that we're talking about, because Mandalorian is there with the marshal, and in order to get the marshal to go away, he's like, go distract him or whatever. Doesn't he like hit the marshal and kind of send that
yeah,
jack? That's like what happened to Boba Fett, right?
yeah, this is
I
another.
didn't make that up in my own head.
Nope, this is another like wink wink reference to Return of the Jedi where uh it's Han Solo, I think, spins around and accidentally knocks into Boba Fett's jetpack and sends him flying off, and he hits into the side of Jabba's sail barge, and then he falls into the Sarlacc pit. And basically, I guess Mandalorian, being a Mandalorian, knows that if you hit a certain part of the jetpack, it's gonna just send you flying. So yeah, that's what he does. And then there's a little line at the end that Cobb Vance says to Din Djarin, and he goes like, it wasn't my fault that this got broken or whatever." So
Oh,
um,
I didn't even notice that.
yeah,
That's nice
tell your people that I didn't break that or something like that.
I didn't
Yeah.
catch that. That's cute.
Was there anything else about that big final action scene that stuck out to you?
Well, I think I'm pretty sure I told you, because there was this, they kept going in on these sand people devices that
Yeah.
they were using, and it was like like a wooden mount for the projectile, and from a distance to me they looked like X-wings. And so then when they would come back out from the scene, and you'd have this dark cave with these mounted projectiles, it looked to me very similar to X-wings coming into the Death Star. And so, I don't know if that was a deliberate or me,
Yeah.
but like I
It's
say, I just, every time they would show those devices that the Sand People had for their weaponry, my mind instantly would go to the X-wings.
Yeah, and we were talking about the X-wing thing didn't jump out to me, but we were talking about how it's kind of a combination between a Western and a medieval kind of a story, because they're going off to slay the dragon, obviously, but those weapons are kind of like medieval type weapons. I'm not even sure what the name of them would be in medieval era, but
like the trebuchet.
yeah, something like that. Yeah,
that you would roll up, and then you would launch your enormous boulder
right.
into the wall. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised if the X-wing thing was also something they were going for as well. And then of course we get the pearl, the Krayt Dragon pearl that we mentioned earlier, as another little almost kind of a literal Easter egg that the Tuscans want to keep as their prize for having slayed the dragon.
Oh, so let me just quickly jump in there. When they were fighting this Krayt Dragon, and having read the little bit I had on Wikipedia, so I was like, okay, we have to see something that showcases the venom, because that was like an element in the article, and then we have to see the pearl. And so as this fight wore on, and all of a sudden people were being doused and disintegrated, I was like, okay, I know there are people who had played Old Republic and are, oh yes, that's so cool. And then as the episode began to wind down, and they, were harvesting the carcass of the Krayt Dragon, I was waiting, and then when he reached in and pulled up the yeah, okay, that's what we needed, that's what we were expecting. Okay, it's all good. So yeah, those kinds of moments I enjoyed. And then the jumping on the speeder bike and kind of, having taken care of the big baddie, kind of riding off into the sunset. It was
right.
Like, yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, I didn't remember the Venom thing, but that actually may have been a pretty big element in the Old Republic games too, I guess.
They talked about in the article just that it was that he had that the Krayt Dragon had a venom in the stomach to help with the devouring of the people, or something along those lines.
Okay.
It wasn't the projectile element seems to have been added to canon with this episode.
Okay. So yeah, then at the end, Cobb Vanth hands over the armor, as was the agreement from the beginning that he would get the armor if he helped defeat the Krayt Dragon. And like you said, he rides off into the sunset. And then there's one more big reveal that I was expecting from the beginning again because of the Hollywood trade publications had kind of spoiled this appearance. But there you have it. We got confirmation that the actual Boba Fett has survived the Sarlacc pit, and he seems to have become like a survivalist kind of character hanging out on Tatooine. He's collected some weapons. It looks like he's got a gaffy stick and a big rifle kind of thing, and he doesn't seem too happy that Mando Din Djarin now has his armor. So my question is like, is this gonna be a season long arc where we periodically check back in with Boba Fett in his pursuit of trying to get his armor back, or is he just going to show up like in the season finale or some episode later on down the line, and we'll get a confrontation between those two? I don't know. What do you think?
I'm inclined to expect that this will be left, and we will explore a lot of other things, and then we will revisit it at some point.
I think you're probably right. I think that's how it's gonna go.
Because I feel like he has this piece, the armor, and I don't know. I'm unsure. I'm torn, but it doesn't seem his goal right now. Right, is he's trying to find other Mandalorians, but you would think he wants to find them that are part of the network,
right?
And so it would not seem that Boba Fett would be part of the network right now. He seems like he's been a man in isolation.
Right, and in the current canon, or in any canon really, Boba Fett was never really a Mandalorian anyway.
No, that's right. That's right. Totally.
He just wore the armor. He's kind of like a cultural appropriation of the Mandalorian armor. So yeah, I don't think he would be the kind of person you want to hang out with either.
So how do you see the fact that he's procured the Boba Fett armor fitting into the journey? Do you see it? Is it going to be a bargaining chip? Maybe is that what it'll prove to be? Because when he was looking for it, I thought of it as a key.
As a key?
I thought when he was trying to make sure that he took it back from the Marshal, I thought of it as far as the Mandalorian story went, was that it would somehow be a bit of a key in his journey, like, opening the next door of his path. But it doesn't feel like, I can't see how it would fit into the puzzle quite that way.
Yeah, I've seen a couple questions raised by this in discussions on the internet, and the first one is, in the previous canon, Boba Fett's armor was made of Durasteel and not Beskar. So the question now is, in the current canon, is Boba Fett's armor Beskar in the way that Din Djarin's armor is Beskar? I think the answer to that question kind of would affect how he handles the armor or what happens with it. And the other question is Din Djarin going to continually upgrade his armor as the series goes along? Or is he just satisfied with the way his armor looks now? And because even at the end of season 1, he added the Mudhorn signet on his shoulder there, or the armor added it. So maybe he wants to use Boba Fett's armor to, if it is Beskar, he could have it melted down and add something else to his current armor, or even just use an existing piece of it to add to his armor. But yeah, what that gets him, what the armor gets him other than just like kind of reclaiming it for his people, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's what kind of left me. That's what kind of left me hanging at the end of this piece. At the end, I was like, where exactly did this story take me beyond seeing yet again a demonstration of how committed he is to the Mandalorian, right?
Yeah.
How much he's committed to the way.
Exactly. And I think the behind the scenes answer to that is they wanted to bring Boba Fett into the equation, and this was the way to do it that made the most sense. But I don't know. I don't know story wise if it makes like
Okay, but so with that in mind, you telling me about the makeup of Boba Fett's armor changes what my perspective was on it. Because, okay, so part of this storyline, the Mandalorian dives into the belly of the Krayt Dragon and comes back out, right? And he seems a bit impacted by the acid, not heavily, but you can
right.
see it seems like it's kind of dripping on him.
Yes.
But yet overall he's not damaged, right?
Right.
And so my thought was, oh, well, this is why Boba Fett, the whatever this thing has for digestive juices, probably isn't as powerful as whatever the Sarlacc would have been throwing at him. So he would have
Right.
just needed to have found his way out of it. Kind of was my what was. So I thought it was
Yeah, I
giving
mean,
me an out,
if anything, the Sarlacc has got to be less
right?
powerfully digested because they say how it takes like thousands of years to be digested in the Sarlacc's stomach. So,
So I felt like they were giving me an out of how is it
yeah,
that having heard how horrific this 1,000 years that
yeah, yeah,
how this Boba Fett could have threatened, but now you're telling me that his armor is made of something different. So now
yeah.
I'm back to square one again.
They could very well like retcon that and say it's Beskar in this canon. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happened.
Or maybe that other steel would have been just as good too, since, like you say, it takes it
Right.
1,000 years to digest something.
Right.
But it was one of those things where, at the time, that seemed like the ultimate horror, right? The Sarlacc, and so now that it seems that I don't know if that raises up the mythology of Boba Fett and kind of what a warrior survivor he is, or diminishes the level of fear I had of the
Right.
Sarlacc.
And the other question is, after all this time, why didn't Boba Fett try to get his armor back from Cobb Vanth? Like, what was preventing that from happening? It
Right?
seems like something that he would have wanted to do or tried to do, but maybe he did, and maybe that just happened, and I don't know. We just missed that part of the story,
It will be interesting to see what
oh,
he's been doing on Tatooine all these years.
the other really cool part of Mos Pelgo, the city in the novels, is that they are raising a baby Hutt that they intercepted from the mining guild. The mining guild was bringing in a new Huttlet to replace Jabba the Hutt as like the crime lord, and that would be under their influence. But the citizens of Mos Pelgo like intercepted the caravan or whatever and took this baby Hutt to raise as their own, and they were gonna use it, I guess, to help enforce their law on Tatooine because they're all about like bringing law and order to Tatooine and stuff. So that's something that they didn't mention at all in the episode, and I wonder like if I mean obviously it's still canon. The books are canon, so that's there. Just we didn't get to see it. Also, Malakili, the Rancor keeper from Return of the Jedi, lives in that town and helps them with their animals and stuff. And I was like expecting that character maybe to show up, but I don't think we saw him among the townspeople.
Wow, so much. I mean, like you
Yeah.
say, it was little portions of these novels, just
Yes.
small little visits to most. What's the name of this town again? Most Pelgrove.
Mos Pelgo.
Pelgo.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yet so much there, like they do with so many places. So, once again, Tatooine, you have given us many stories and many more people to learn more about. So, yay! Overall, I was very, very excited, and it just like I was on such a high when the episode was over.
Yeah.
It was so entertaining and interesting and fun.
And it's 1 of 8, which is crazy. So we've still got 7 more weeks to look forward to.
So I guess that wraps it up. I will say that Mike has done a wonderful recap on the website, so you can scroll through that and read.
I
Mike's
didn't
thoughts on
do.
the episode.
I'll say that I didn't do like a thorough, detailed recap. I'm not doing that for the Mandalorian. I'm just kind of giving like broad strokes
Yeah.
of what happened and then like my opinion. Like I do Simpsons recaps as well, and those are a little bit more like this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. But with the Star Wars stuff, I tend to be a little more general as far as like plot goes, and then like try to talk about on an aesthetic level, what I thought of it.
And then the other, I was going to point out, Mike did a write-up of the red carpet event and some of the what we learned from the virtual red carpet that was hosted on Friday afternoon by Verizon. And the part of that particular episode that I really enjoyed was the show ends. It concluded with an in-studio performance of the title of The Mandalorian, the title theme. And to just see the orchestra perform and to hear it, because it sounded different than it has, for television. And
right.
I really appreciated that. So I just wanted to be sure to make people aware of that. And that's at the Star Wars YouTube channel. And like I say, it's right towards the end, about 24 minutes in is where you would find that particular moment.
Another great little tidbit that we got out of that event was Jon Favreau talking about how they recorded the score for season 2 remotely. All the orchestra members were in different places, but they managed to get it together. But then he's saying, like, since then they've figured out a way to do it with them all in the same place, and they've safely figured out how they're going to shoot the 3rd season, which he said they're going to start shooting very soon. So,
which was very exciting news.
Yeah, that's really cool. So
we may this had been filmed before all the and so it was all the post-production elements that were trying to make their way around COVID.
I remember they were shooting season 2 when season 1 started. So when it started airing. So they had already pre-planned that season, obviously, and then went into production before they knew the reaction or what the reaction would be. I guess the powers that be at Disney were confident enough in it to have it ready to come back this year. And then it seems like if they start production now or soon, they would have a season 3 ready to go by the end of next year as well, if I had to guess.
Yeah. And finally, I'm going to share, with doing these Mando Mondays with Mike, I have been exposed to many, 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 many Baby Yoda products and merchandise, and I finally ended up buying something. I bought the Baby Yoda chia.
Oh, it's growing already.
And this is how it's already growing. It arrived last week, and here it is now, sprouting. So yeah.
It's funny when you said you got that. I thought it was his head, and the head would grow.
No, they did the pram. Yeah. So you can spread it all around the pram. I put some on his head to kind of have like a little bit, but those haven't sprouted. I don't know if they will, but yeah, I thought it'd be kind of funny to have a little bit of that on his head there. So, but I had to share my chia because I've never bought a chia pet. I will say it was smaller than I expected. So, which is not a bad thing.
Okay.
as collectors, Mike and I can both attest to, you run out of shelf space way too quickly. So I was not upset that it was small. So I guess for now that's it for Mando Monday. We've taken you through all the items that they've thrust upon us, and we've talked about Friday's episode. I'm very excited, obviously, for this upcoming Friday.
Yeah, we have no idea what to expect. It could.
Idea.
They've got to go to that ice planet. What else? What else are we waiting for? The boat. They're going to be on a boat at some point, but we don't know which is coming which.
And neither of those would be Tatooine. So therefore, we know we have to get off planet at some point.
Yeah, if I had to guess, I'd say we're done with Tatooine for this season. So it's all other stuff from here on out.
We'll see. I'm excited for the continuing adventures, and we'll be here next Monday to talk about all the items and the plot of the Friday episode, and we'll see. And until then, let's see. This evening on Laughing Place YouTube channel, we're going to be talking about Sorcerer's Apprentice, our movie club. That's the focus tonight, the Nick Cage film. So we'll be talking about Sorcerer's Apprentice. And then later this week, Mike and I will be getting together again on Thursday, and we're going to talk about all the Star Wars talk, pretty much that isn't Mandalorian. I'm sure we'll touch on some Mando news, but we're going to try and make sure that we keep you up to date. Mike does a great job of comic reviews and book reviews and making sure that we still, keep on top of what's happening in the rest of the Star Wars universe, even though we all may be a little bit more fixated on the Mandalorian at the moment. So I
The
guess
fact that there's enough happening in Star Wars these days to warrant two separate shows makes me very happy.
it is a great time to be a Star Wars fan. So until next time, may the Force be with you. Have a lovely day. Thanks for joining us and see you soon.